What's up guys? Welcome to AnimeKouhai. If you'd like to help me out, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel.
According to my calculations, we should be able to hold out for 20 minutes.
That's really comforting. I don't feel reassured at all.
Phobio thought, but he couldn't help but laugh. But he pressed on. As much as he hated to admit it, Phobio knew he was weak. He had resolved to fight in the only way the weak could and would do everything in his power to make that work. And so, the battle entered its second phase. Now, Phobio and Esprit were fighting as one, and because their existence values were combined, they were stronger. However, even their combined existence value was still under 1 million, which wasn't much higher than Peliod's. Despite this, their performance had significantly improved, allowing them to keep up with her. One reason for this was that Phobio no longer had to worry about physical injuries as Esprit was now absorbing the damage. He didn't have to worry about physical exhaustion anymore, either. Phobio decided to stop concerning himself with all the potential issues and shifted to an all-out combat style, abandoning any thought of a long-term battle. Of course, this approach would shorten the time they could actively fight, but the strategy worked because Esprit was supplying him with magicules. Phobio's beast form had 3 stages. The first was his normal Majin form, which was the most balanced and least taxing. The second was the leopard-headed Majin form, which was versatile and specialized in combat. The third was the fully animalized form, which was the fastest in terms of speed alone. However, it wasn't ideal for fighting humans since it couldn't utilize most of the skills Phobio had been trained in. Phobio was now in his most powerful leopard-headed Majin form. This form wasn't efficient in terms of magicule consumption, and using his full strength meant his body took damage. He had been fighting cautiously, always controlling his power and releasing it when necessary. Even though he sustained injuries, his high regenerative abilities as a beastman allowed him to manage. However, it wasn't sustainable for a long-term fight as maintaining such high regeneration consumed a lot of stamina and magicules. But now, Phobio was able to set aside all those worries and focus entirely on the battle. His lost hand had been regenerated, allowing him to use his full power once more. This was all thanks to Esprit. Esprit protected Phobio by enveloping his soul within her mental form. This was possible due to her unique skill, Discerner. With this ability, Esprit could establish a connection that transcended time and space with those she was familiar with. And by combining this skill with the demonic contract, she could control the soul with even greater precision. As a result, Esprit absorbed a significant amount of damage, but that was the extent of it. She showcased her demonic resilience by enduring the pain with various forms of resistance. However, pain still hurt, no matter what.
Honestly, I can't stand insect type. When it comes to direct mental attacks, pain nullification doesn't do much.
It was this accumulation of factors that gave the insectors their edge over demons. The compatibility was so skewed that in a match between 2 opponents of equal skill, the insectar would always come out on top. With these unfavorable conditions, Esprit's injuries were quickly piling up. Even so, Phobio remained alive and well, and thanks to Esprit's sacrifices, the battle continued to be a close contest. Moreover, there was a silver lining.
I suspected as much. She's lasted longer than I expected, but now I understand why. Never mind, you don't need to worry about it.
Speaking to herself, Esprit elaborated.
As I thought, she's specialized in magic and seems to have taken damage from Carrera-sama's spell. I figured there had to be a downside to repelling such a massive attack.
Carrera's Abyss Annihilation had the potential to destroy even a planet, depending on how it was wielded. Since Peliod had faced the attack head-on, Esprit had assumed something had to be off. She wasn't strong enough to prove it outright, but after inhabiting Phobio and fully utilizing Discerner, she was convinced.
So, if we target that weak spot, could we win?
That's not going to happen. The only reason she's not attacking is because she's weakened, but her defenses are still impenetrable. Still, on the bright side, it works in our favor too.
Hearing Esprit's response, Phobio fell silent for a moment before letting out a heavy sigh.
Looks like we'll just have to hang on until reinforcements get here.
It was a frustrating and less than ideal conclusion, but it was the only one they could reach. Accepting this, Phobio refocused on Peliod to continue playing his part. And so, about 40 minutes had passed.
We've done our best, haven't we?
Phobio remarked.
Too exhausted to talk. I can't keep going. I'm really about to die here.
Despite being covered in wounds, Phobio was still alive. Esprit, who had been shielding his soul and absorbing the damage, was barely conscious. Considering that she had initially estimated they could last only 20 minutes, Esprit was quite pleased with the outcome. However, it came at the cost of completely draining her energy. Meanwhile, Peliod was in excellent condition. Her movements had improved since the start of the battle, indicating that she was recovering from the damage inflicted by Carrera. Strategically, this was a significant victory, but in terms of tactics, it was a loss. But that was fine because both Phobio and Esprit had fulfilled their roles.
Damn, this is frustrating, especially since I just got a girlfriend.
What's that? Is that why you worked harder than expected? Well, I'll give you credit for surpassing my expectations, so as a reward, I'll make sure to pass on your message to her.
Since they could no longer stand, all they could do now was wait for death. So, they engaged in some lighthearted conversation. Phobio wanted to reminisce about Gobua, whom he had grown fond of, but Esprit didn't allow it.
You really are a devil.
Indeed, I am a demon, and so?
That's right. It's sad that you can't even appreciate my sarcasm.
Well, even I'd feel a bit troubled if you praised me too much.
I'm not praising you, you know.
Ah, yes, I suppose so.
Through this intense battle, they had become close enough to engage in such banter. And so, while trying to drown out their fear of death and the shame of defeat, they awaited the inevitable. However, then, without a change in her expression, Peliod extended her hand. The part of her body that activated magic, which had been destroyed by Carrera's attack, had been restored, allowing her to use magicules more efficiently. Phobio, lying helpless on the ground, could be finished off at any moment. Peliod eagerly anticipated hearing Phobio's screams of death, unaware that he and his companion were casually chatting to delay the inevitable. Peliod felt no respect for those who had caused her so much trouble and simply pursued the pleasure her instincts craved. Intense beams of compressed magicules shot from Peliod's fingertips, but instead of hitting Phobio, they only scorched the ground. A hobgoblin had suddenly leapt out of Phobio's shadow, grabbed his leg, and pulled him down.
Whoa, wasn't that a perfectly timed entrance?
A cheerful voice echoed across the battlefield. The owner of that voice, of course, was Datta. In a bid to turn the tide of this desperate situation, he had rushed to the scene as reinforcements, making a grand entrance. But Datta wasn't the only one who arrived. Gobua, a red-haired beauty dressed in a scarlet military uniform, caught Phobio as he was hurled toward her. She held Phobio tightly against her chest and retreated to a safer position to shield him from Peliod's attack.
Score.
Phobio thought to himself, though no one else would know. Finally, Ranga appeared, stepping forward to shield Datta and intimidate Peliod, who was preparing to pursue them. Ranga unleashed an apocalypse howling, without hesitation, successfully slowing Peliod's movements. This saved Phobio and the Esprit within him from certain death. Esprit, who had returned to her original body, stood up and spoke.
Wow, as expected of Datta-sama. I knew you'd come to save me.
Esprit, her eyes sparkling with admiration, was actually a fan of Datta.
Really? That's a bit embarrassing.
As one of the 4 heavenly kings, please show me your cool side.
Esprit was genuinely flattering Datta, not trying to provoke him, but expressing her true feelings.
Well then.
Datta said, regaining his confidence.
When this battle is over, how about we go on a date?
Oh, I'm definitely ready for something like that.
It wasn't love or anything similar, just pure admiration, so this shouldn't be misunderstood. Esprit then withdrew from the front line with the others, leaving Datta slightly dejected. Thus, the front line's collapse was prevented thanks to the efforts of Phobio and Esprit. With new players on the battlefield, the battle entered its 3rd round. Sometime after the Great War began, several non-aggression zones emerged on the battlefield. These zones were where battles between transcendent beings raged on, and anyone not strong enough would be disintegrated just by approaching these areas. High above the battlefield, the one-on-one duel between Frey, one of Milam's 4 heavenly kings, and Insect General Torin, had reached an intense new level. The soaring flock and Milam's guards could only watch from afar, keeping their distance to avoid getting caught in the high-speed aerial combat between these two forces, who were moving faster than the speed of sound. The same was true for the flying insects under Torin, who were scattering in a wide formation among their ranks. It appeared that the outcome of the war would hinge on the final showdown between these two in the sky, but that assumption was clearly mistaken. From a bird's-eye view of the battlefield, it was evident that only one side's forces were steadily dwindling.
You're weak. You're pretty good at dodging, though.
Initially, Frey took the offensive, but after her signature claw attack was dodged, she found herself on the defensive. She had made several more attempts to strike, but they were ineffective against Torin, who didn't even see her as a real threat. To be honest, the only thing that probably stood out to him was her speed. Of course, Torin wasn't the type to drop his guard, which was why the fight had dragged on this long, but now he was starting to think it was time to wrap things up. That's why he taunted her, but Frey only responded with a smirk.
Oh, is that what you think? In that case, I should be thanking you.
What?
Torin tilted his head, confused by her words. She should have been the one feeling cornered, but Frey's expression showed a clear and confident smile.
Thank goodness you're an idiot.
What did you say?
In a battle, what do you think is the most important factor?
Speed.
Well, that's one way to look at it. But
Frey agreed that speed was indeed crucial. However, she also knew there was an even more important factor that shouldn't be overlooked. It wasn't just about physical ability, it was about strategy. In other words, it was all about how you fought. When two fighters of equal skill levels face off, the outcome often hinges on whether or not they strategize during the battle. This was evident in the current fight. After her first attack missed its mark, Frey immediately realized that this would be a drawn-out battle. She decided to conserve her energy while slowly wearing down her opponent, so she adjusted her tactics to maximize efficiency. This strategy extended not just to herself but to her subordinates as well. In essence, Frey manipulated the battle situation to her advantage by using the clash between her and Torin to weaken the enemy forces. Her brilliance lay in using Torin's own power against him, pushing the enemy to the edge of defeat. This was Frey's true nature, the cunning Sky Queen. Frey chuckled, and Torin finally grasped what had been happening.
What? You have been planning this from the start.
so, what do you think?
Arrogant. But you still can't even scratch me, so I am the one who will win.
Infuriated, Torin sped up and charged at Frey. However, Frey had anticipated this move as well.
A big thanks to the AnimeKouhai patrons who made this video possible. Jared Bressler, Havox, Speed Saber, Curtis Loban, Judah Herrera, Just a Guy, Miss L.W. Hernandez, Jason Martin, Zach Rosen, Jerry Sladek, Ray Perez, Jay, Donald Williams, Moab A, Day of Light, John M, Godman Gaming, Markithian Tidwell, Adrian, Kumo, Sanketh Chelu, T. Bush, JV, Thomas, Christ, Joshua Cousins, Jose Hernandez, Khalid, Christian Deshazer, Divine C. Harris, Montyboy98, Ruben, Yuki Iki, Gray, Kemal Ebanks, Isaac, Koala King 93, Quilly Buckner, Alver, Normal Defate, Vicente Baharias, Joshua Andrade, L, Gary Miles, Dragon Spawn 666, J. Rule, Leiron Sangkap, Lucas Guet, Jason Martin, Ekotski, Sky T, Diego Ginoza, Andre Hamilton, Martin Ramos, Guy Ensley, Simon Rode, Emperor WSA, Miko Espinosa, George Hage, Pratik Bandari, Jackson Early, Smexy, Carl Stephen Bernadal, Gareth Hashimoto, Steven Madison, Vasto Lord, Marl Barsha, Ralph Ignacio, Efrain Hernandez, William Locke, Kamal Luke, Spencer Candila, Ian Sikibiol, Thanacorn Lee Sawat, KACP9R, The Harv, Drayden Yamauchi, Alex Buthanu, Nathaniel Johnson, Michael Brinkley, Elijah Pierre, Michael Stern. Thank you so much for helping out. I'll see you guys in the next video.